Hey, bula vinaka. Thank you, everybody. Greeting you all, Vinaka Vakalevu, for joining us this beautiful Monday. Maybe afternoon for some of you, maybe morning. It's still Sunday evening for us here in the US, but it is after lunch in Melbourne, Australia. So we are very, very happy and very lucky to have Nilima Rao, who is joining us today from the beautiful city of Melbourne. So thank you as well for everybody, for those who are logging in. I've shared our poster today, basically to celebrate our Fiji Language Week. And this year, I've decided to take a different tack by celebrating our writers and our authors. And I've got a lineup of 7 amazing writers, 7 amazing authors who have connections to Fiji. And we are so blessed that Nilima Rao accepted my humble request to be here with us, just so we can hear her story as to what motivated her to go into writing, to go into creative storytelling, to go to share maybe stories that many of us just hear at home when we were growing up, maybe hearing it from our grandma, from our grandfather, from our parents. But now turning those stories into books. Yeah. And so we're really happy that Nilima is here with us to share her story with us. So as usual, for those of you who follow me on my page on Talanoa with Dr. T, I have a song that I prepared to welcome us to this Talanoa program. So let me find our song and we shall start. So here it is. Okay. Right, Vinakavaka level. Let me go back here. All the technology behind the scene. Yes, we can make this happen. So, since Nilima and I are from Fiji, and also today, most of us were watching the rugby in France, and even though Fiji lost to Portugal, we're still going through to the quarterfinals. So, this is a beautiful song that will keep us smiling and keep us happy, looking forward to the quarterfinals game next week, but also a song that will remind us of Fiji, our home, a home that Nilim and I both share with each and every one of you. I know we'll all enjoy it. It's called Vanua Domoni Naka.
Sai viti lomani na lobo
vinaka, rongo vinaka na sere to Congo, and the vabin vinaka na kenalangati tiko na sere na vanua domoni. Au klana bunda serengo le weekend and the talitaka bakalebu, bunoda banganda bakarongo tiko mikina and talitaka na serengo bako sivi kima tiko ngo ibalang, bako mbulu tiko verto na sema tiko mai Perth, Western Australia, bulu vinaka rendini buni wai Triza turangaba. Malo ambula nakatadingo na sema tiko mai Eleanor Amboselawa bakumbula talchukana bubale na tiko mai malea Mercedes binakvalebu na sema tiko mai bikimni kede na bakorong tiko mai and sinu binakongo. Happy Fijian Language Week 2023. Marotaka bakalebu na nomni bakorong mai na sinu kuwa and marotaka na kabiongo se singalebu ni kuwa tiko ngo na nonta bulang. So we have a wonderful guest who agreed to my humble request, as I said earlier, and her name is Nilima Rao. Midala welcome bula saramanda vi Nilima, namaste and bula vinaka.
Bula, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you again for accepting my humble invitation. So tell us where you're logging in from and what's the weather like where you are.
I'm coming from Melbourne, Australia. We are having a typical spring day, which we haven't actually had typical spring days for a while. So it's brilliant and sunny and still a little bit cool, but yeah, really nice over here at the moment.
Oh, as I was saying earlier, that this year I wanted to take the Fiji Language Week on a different, kind of level, maybe if I can say that, or take a different angle on how we celebrate. So since we're celebrating language, also celebrating our culture and our history, I thought it'd be nice to spotlight some of our authors and our writers. So you're going to be the first one on the list of Nilima. So can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and where you were brought up when you were little until now?
Yep, of course. So I was born in Suva, and my family moved over to Australia when I was really young, when I was 3 years old. So my older sister and I came over, and then my parents had 2 more kids over here. So we've got a mix in our family of migrant and first generation. So and I grew up in North Queensland, and I've did all of my education in Australia, spent some time working overseas in the US and the UK, and finally I've settled in Melbourne. And so, in this time, my family's always had strong ties back to Fiji. When I was in high school, my father was transferred back to Suva back to Fiji, I think Lautoka and Suva, for work. So we would go, and my older sister and I went to boarding school, but we spent all of our school holidays in Fiji when I was in high school as well. So I've always had strong links back to Fiji.
Wow, that's amazing. And today we'll be focusing on your book, and now you becoming an author and author and writer, but it's just so inspiring. When I was reading your bio and when I saw, papers or things written about you, and I was like, man, I really want to talk to this lady. There's something about you that was just so inspiring. And when I was putting together the list of all the authors and writers I want to talk about or talk to, your name popped up. I was like, I'm going to find her. So I Googled you, so and I was so glad that I found you. And thank you again for accepting my message that I sent to you. Now, talking about school, what subjects did you take in school? Were you in the field of arts or were you in science? What did you take?
Yeah, so, high school, obviously a whole broad variety of things. And I did really love writing when I was in school. But I did the very practical, I got grades to get into law and IT. So I started doing a double degree in law and IT. So there was some writing in law, but not that sort of creative writing. Yeah, so very much not a science, not an arts background at all. But I always loved writing. And then once I got a little bit more established in my career, I came back to writing and started doing sort of more informal courses. So lots of sort of community classes and that sort of thing. I actually spent some time at UCLA in there. They had like a summer program where they had some writing courses. So yeah, did lots of smaller writing courses.
Wow, well, that's amazing. You know, how you said that you've always loved writing. Have you thought about, like, was there someone in the family, or what actually inspired you to kind of like just enjoy writing? Was there something that you want to share?
I think that because we had a launch here in Melbourne, and my father got up and spoke for a little while, and he commented on how my older sister and I, we would get in trouble for reading too much. Like, this is not a thing that I think is very common, that kids get in trouble for reading too much. We would get in trouble. We'd be told you have to put the books down. There's other things to do. Go out and do some chores, go out and play, that sort of thing. You can't just spend all your time reading. So I think it was just that we were such avid readers, both Karishma and I, that for me, it felt very natural to want to then tell the stories as well, not just read them. So, yeah, I think that's
That is amazing. So the takeaway from there to our listeners, reading, right? So reading, and that is amazing. I'm just so glad you mentioned that, because I used to get into trouble too. I remember when I was little, I hardly, go out and play with my friends, or even when I'm sitting in the bus, I'm not talking to my other friends in the bus. Going in the school bus is fun, but I'm there looking down like this. I'm always, reading. But thank you for inspiring us, and thanks to your dad for reminding you, hey, Nilima, put that book down, go and play or go and do something else. And so what happened when you were in IT and law? How did your path came over to creative writing? How did that navigating, how did it go?
Yeah, so as I said, I think once I reached a point, I've mostly pursued the IT side. In fact, completely pursued the IT side. So when I got to a point where I was a bit established in my career and I was sort of looking around for, the hobbies and that sort of thing, I started thinking back to how much I used to love writing, when I was in school, and thought, yeah, I'll try and do some courses about writing. And that's sort of where it went. Once I started doing the courses, started writing short stories, I caught the bug, and wanted to keep going.
Wow. And so you would recommend, like, for those who are listening in who are thinking, wow, I really want to follow that path. So taking those short courses complements your vision and that hobby. You classify that hobby.
Yeah, so initially back then, I would definitely have said it was a hobby, and then it became a passion, and then it became my second career.
Wow, man, I love the word passion. That's a really, really, interesting word there, because passion takes you further, right? Than anything else. So if you're doing your degree, it can go up to here, but when passion comes, it go past that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so that's really amazing. So you mentioned about writing in high school. Did you get what were you involved in? Were there school projects you were part of, or did any of those get published within the school? How did it work?
Yeah, so mostly, essays and that sort of thing, and some smaller creative pieces. But there was probably one thing in particular in year 12. My English teacher, Mrs. Perrone, I think she's passed away now, so I can't do a call out to her, but Mrs. Perrone gave us a task to write a journal for the year. And, she didn't want to know about what you ate or breaking up with your boyfriend and that sort of thing. She wanted to know about meaningful things. So I took that to heart, and I wrote the journal. And then I got an A+ for it. She loved it, and she asked me if she could take some samples from it as the examples for the following year to show to the class. And I think writing that journal was probably the thing that I loved writing that journal. It was amazing to express yourself in that meaningful way, knowing that at least one person is going to read it. So I could be deeply personal, but at the same time, I was thinking about my audience as well. So yeah, that was probably the one project that really sticks in my head from high school.
Yeah, so thanks to Miss Parnay for that inspiration, and you took it to heart, and you did a very good work on it, and you got A+. So how did you feel when you got the result?
Yes, I was very, very happy when I got the result, and even more thrilled when she asked if she could use it as the sample for next year.
Wow, that's amazing. And now I wanted to ask about your parents, your mom and dad, when that happened, for you getting that feedback, and you felt that this is your calling. Did you get a chance to talk about it with mom and dad? And what was the response that you seem to be enjoying writing?
Yeah, well, I don't know about in high school, and they've been hugely supportive of of all of my efforts with writing this book. So, I took some time off work to go and do research in Fiji, and worked part-time for a while I was trying to figure out how to get it written and all of that sort of thing. And I always was sort of waiting for my parents to go, this is not the practical choice. Why aren't you, you should be working, da da da. They've never said anything like that. They've always been so supportive, and I think they're really thrilled that I was taking an interest in my Fijian Indian heritage and in Fiji. And yeah, so they've just been supportive every step of the way.
Wow, man, that's amazing. And I know for our listeners, Bulibinaka, to all our wonderful listeners that are connecting in, Mr. Neil Billings, Bulibinaka, Salome Voliti, Ateda Koro, Chokaveti Mbimbi. Wow, there's a whole lot of our dear friends. Some are living in the US, some in Fiji. Vinaka Valley for listening in, and I hope that our Talanoa today with Nilima will encourage each one of us to start writing our stories. That's the mission of this week's interviews with our writers and our authors. So, Nilima, to this book, you already have one book that you are working on. What motivated you to write this first book? Tell us about this book.
So the first book, A Disappearance in Fiji, is it's set in 1914, which is when still part of that period where Indians were being brought to Fiji to work in the cane fields as indentured labourers. And so for me, the inspiration, the reason I started writing it was I went to India, like growing up, I didn't pay any attention to my Fijian Indian heritage. I was pretty disconnected from it. I was living, modern Australian life. I was very focused on all of the modern Australian things. And then I went to India as a tourist in my 20s and saw the poverty there and started to think about my ancestry and how is it that we're not in India and not in such poverty. So I started doing some research on the indentured labour system and started to get a bit interested in that and started thinking, I want to write a story that's set around then, because I'm of that heritage and I didn't know the story. So there's going to be so many people who go to Fiji as sit on the beach and never know why there's Indians working in the hotel that they're at. So I thought for my purposes, it was for my own education, it was interesting, but I thought it would be good to get this story out for a broader audience. So that's sort of the motivation behind it all.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Nilima, for for sharing that. And you decided to do it as part of your own journey, learning more about yourself. And now you've written the book that now anyone around the world can take that book and have a glimpse of that history, right? That many of us only learned in school, and now you've written it in a very a very easy to follow way, where we can be able to go back in time. So how long did it take for you to do your research?
Research and writing, years. So I spent 2 months in Fiji in 2016 doing some research. I spent a lot of time at the National Archives. I spent some time at USP, just learning more about that history. Professor Bridgelal, I read a lot of his books, and then started, so research, that was the main round of research that I did, but also I kept going back. There's some resources in Australia as well, so I would go to the libraries here and look here as well. So yes, the first book, research mainly in that first 2 months, but then it took me years to write it because I didn't know what I was doing. It's a huge project writing a book, and I had only written short stories before, so this was my first time trying to write something this length. So yeah, it was a big project.
And tell us, like how many words or how many chapters you have altogether in your book?
So I think it came up to somewhere close to 70,000 words. Remember how many chapters it was. I started off breaking it down by days, and then we did some additional breakdowns, but yeah, so it was about 70,000 words. I'm working on the second book right now, and that's coming to the same word count. But the first book I started writing basically beginning of 2017, and I had a version that was good enough to send to publishers mid 2021, and then I had it edited by, like, fully edited, and that the final version was March of 2022. So 16 or 2017 to sometime in early 2022. It was a long project, but this second one has been much quicker because the world is already established, my characters are already established, and I just kind of know what I'm doing a little bit more. So the second one's been much quicker.
Wow, that's amazing. So for those who are listening in, ni Milote Ratundina, so he made a comment to say, very interesting of her own initiative to do such things. So that's really great. So you've really, touched people's lives by, following your own initiative. It's just your own will to do something, and you did it. And I love that. You had the vision and you act on it. Yeah,
Yes.
Actually. So Ateva Koro asked, what is the name of your book? So I will try and put up a link on this. Do you have a copy with you, or is there anything you want to share?
Give me 1 second. I will show you.
Okay. So hold on a minute. Ateva, she's going to show us the book. Yay!
So this is the Australian edition. I'm not sure if that's showing up okay.
I'll take a photo. Yeah.
So this is the Australian edition. It's on the shelves in Australia, the US, New Zealand, and the UK. And so there's some slightly different covers, but yes, the book is called A Disappearance in Fiji.
So can you hold it one more time? The others are going to take a photo. So if you are watching, wherever you are, US, New Zealand, UK, so Nilima Rao and A Disappearance in Fiji. I love the artwork on the cover.
Yeah, this is the Australian one. You've probably seen the American one. Yes. The American one's a little bit different. I didn't know anything about the publishing industry before this, and I found out that they want a different cover for every market. So it's all new world to me.
So when you chose that title, I know it took you long, 2007. So let's do the math. 2016, the whole idea came about. Yeah, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Wow, it's a labor of love, right?
Yeah.
About 7 years.
Yeah? 7 years from woe to go, and probably 5 years of actively writing it. Yeah.
Wow. So for those of you who are listening and you're wanting to write a book, I'm sure most of us on your first book one, it'll take that long. So don't feel sad, or don't feel what's the word? Yeah, don't feel kind of like, oh, this is so much work. Yes. It is so much work, but if you're passionate about it, you'll get there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. It's a lot of work, and I think it's easy to get discouraged, and it's easy to lose sight of the end result. But I think it is, as you said before, that passion that drives you through. So if you really care about your idea, I think it keeps you going.
Absolutely. Now, with the story that was set in your book, I know you, with the research, you must have found so many, storylines that you would have chosen. Why did you choose that one?
I really wanted something that was set on a plantation, because I wanted to explore the idea of what life was like for the indentured laborers on the plantation. I initially wanted to have my detective. I knew it was going to be a crime novel because I wanted a historical fiction, and I wanted something, as you said before, I wanted something easy to read. I wanted something that was accessible for people. So I wanted crime fiction, so I had to have a detective. I initially tried to have my detective be a young indentured labourer girl, and sort of came to the conclusion that she couldn't investigate anything because she's got no time. She's basically next thing to a slave. She can't investigate a crime. She's got no time to investigate a crime. So in the end, I realised I needed to have a police officer. And doing my research, looking at the Fiji Times, I learnt about these Sikh police officers who were sent over from Hong Kong to sort of help start the Fijian police force. So that's who my main character is based on, the idea of these Sikh police officers who were sent over. My backstory for my protagonist, Prakal Singh, is different. He's not being sent over in the same way that the real Hong Kong police officers were sent over, but that was where I got the inspiration for having the idea of, oh, this Sikh police officer sent over from Hong Kong.
Wow. It's just fascinating, when you mention Hong Kong and you realize what is common between Hong Kong, Fiji, and India, it all connects back to England, right?
That's right. Yes.
Oh, my
Yeah,
goodness.
colonialism is a big theme in these books. Yeah.
Wow. I also recently read the late Professor Bridgelal's book, The Leveling Wind. Oh my goodness, it was so hard to put that book down, and it was just so moving. And so for everyone that is listening in, if you really want to also get hold of that book, The Leveling Wind by Professor Bridgelal, please get a book. Find it on Amazon. What about your book? Can they get it on Amazon too?
Yeah, I can send through some links if that afterwards. Yep. So yes, on Amazon, there's audiobook, ebook, and then physical copies as well.
Wow,
if you
that is
listen to the
amazing.
audiobook, I love my narrator on the audiobook, but he didn't do my Fijian my Fijian characters basically sound Australian, I think. So forgive him for that. He's a British man. He didn't know how to do a Fijian accent very well.
Maybe for your second book, tell us about your second book.
So the second book I'm working on right now, I've got a deadline, 1st of December. It's called A Shipwreck in Fiji. And so the first book was very focused. It's set on the plantation. It's focused on Indians under indenture. The second book is a bit more focused on Indians who finished their indenture and are now living free in the colony. But the other thing is, in the first book, I have some Fijian characters, some Italke, sorry if I said that wrong, Italke characters, but there's not a big focus on Italke culture. In the second book, I sort of went, if I'm going to set books in Fiji, this is not something I can ignore. Okay, my focus is the Indians, but I want to make sure that I have some presence of Fijian people in there as well. So I've got there's some scenes set in a village. I just went to Fiji and I went to Levuka, and I had the privilege of spending a night in Livoni village, which was amazing. It was the best experience. And I met such lovely people there. So yes, so the second book has some scenes set in a village and a bit more focus on Fijian culture as well.
Wow. Yes, thank you so much for, highlighting those stories, because I think a few years ago, there was a village in Rewa. I'm looking at, I think it's a village of Naivilava. So for those of you who are listening in, yes, it's a village of Naivilava who have welcomed, when you use the word a shipwreck in Fiji, when the first, one of the first boats that came, and it was wrecked. Is it the Syria?
Syria, yeah.
Yeah, Syria, and the village of Naivilava, and they were the ones that actually welcomed and looked after those that survived the shipwreck. So it's just wonderful to see that you are doing this work, and also you're connecting it to the Itoke, people as well. So was it easy for you to connect with some of your Itoke folks back in Fiji, or how did you navigate that space?
So I've got friends here in Melbourne who are from Levuka, and so Levuka being such a small community, everyone is very intermingled. So they referred me to somebody who referred me to somebody else, and that lady lives in the village. So she was able to, I met up with her when I got to Levuka, and she was able to, once she understood why I wanted to go, she was happy to take me, introduce me to the chief so that I could be welcomed into the village, and yeah, had a brilliant sort of 24 hours there. Really nice.
So no, that's wonderful. And I think, what you've done to actually go, to meet people on the ground, I think that's really, really powerful.
Yes.
It adds another level to your writing because you're writing it from experience. So that's really awesome, to actually see that. Now, in terms of book 2, so it's due in December. How long will it be for it to be published? Will it take off another?
Takes a while. So I don't know exactly why, but something about the American publishing industry, it takes them 15 months. So even though I don't think it'll be out until mid 2025, and then I don't quite know what's happening with the rest of the world at the moment, Australia, New Zealand, UK. Hopefully they will also sign up, and then it'll be on shelves everywhere.
Wow. Man, that's so encouraging. And how did it feel for you personally to hold that book, your first one?
I mean, I was in tears. Like, it was just a hugely emotional moment. It's such a long project. It's not easy getting a book published. So to go through all of the hard work and hard yards of getting it published, and to actually have it in my hands, it was undescribable.
Oh my goodness. So it's just, you mentioned 2022, right? It was published. So last year.
No, June of 23. So I was done with my editing March of last year. And like I said, it takes them 15 months to get it on the shelves. So and there were lots of things to figure out. Then we had to figure out the cover and typesetting and all of this sort of other stuff. So there was still a little bit going on, but in terms of actual writing, I was done March of last year.
It's just so inspiring that, your first book was, published earlier 2023, and now you're working on your second book on the same year. I just love that. Is it because you've got the flow now?
I've got some momentum, yeah. So I definitely wanted to keep going with the second one. I think I'm going to take a little break before I start the third one, because I think I need a holiday. but I'll probably start working on that June of next year.
Oh my goodness!
I'm going to take the summer off, and then I'll get back to work.
That is so inspiring. So now I can see book 3. And so what is Nilima looking at in years to come in terms of writing?
Yeah, so book 3, as I said, I think I'll start that mid next year. I don't have a title for that one yet, and I don't really have the plot. Like, it will be another murder mystery. So the second one is the same characters, the third one will be the same characters. And the third one will be focused on, Indians then had to choose whether they would stay in Fiji or go back to India at about the 10-year mark. So the third one will be focused on, should I stay or should I go? And then I don't know what will happen after that. After that, my writing life is a blank page. After that, I don't know what happens.
Wow, that is just so inspiring. Yeah? And I think many of our listeners, some of them who are listening right now, and those who will listen to our recording, just hearing your story, will be just be given the energy, and so empowering. That seems like nothing is stopping you, because there's a lot of hoops and hurdles that you have to go through to get the first one published, and now you have the second one, and even thinking of the third one. Wow, Nilima. Now, what is your advice? Because I know there's some young listeners listening in who are aspiring writers who want to write or already in the space. What would you advise them? Any simple rules or anything that you want to share to them in terms of writing?
I would say one thing is write. Don't be put off by, when I started writing, I would write something and then I'd go, oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. Why am I even bothering? There's I read this thing and I thought it just resonated so strongly. It was as an early writer, as a novice writer, your taste is better than your ability. So you have to just keep writing. You will get better. Don't worry that the first thing you write sounds terrible. The most important thing is just to keep writing. If you've got something written, you can edit it. If you keep just crossing it out and throwing it away, then you're never going to get anywhere. So keep writing, push through. Don't let your internal critic shut you down. That's probably my biggest piece of advice.
Wow, man, Reina, we can keep writing. And I really like what you said, just write it, and you will get better. That is just so inspiring. And you're absolutely right. I'm sure those of us who are listening will all know that you all have that inner critic, like as you said, oh, this is not good enough, or I don't feel this is right. How did you navigate that space yourself, Nilima, when you were having that doubt, or you're critiquing yourself too much?
It was really it's probably the most challenging thing. I think that's why book one took so long, because I would beat myself up, but I still felt, I think the way I thought of it was, there wasn't much being written set in Fiji. I think I was like, this is a good idea. I just have to live up to the idea. And so when it was hard and when I felt like it wasn't good, I just kept pushing myself to go, just keep going, because this idea is good. So I think that's what I meant by, if you've got a passion, if you think that the thing that you are writing is something worth writing, that's the thing that will keep you going, even when the inner critic is beating you up.
Wow. And then another question I want to ask is, you were 3 years old when your family moved to Australia, and you travel around the world to the US and also to the UK. And of course, Australia is your other home where you are logging in from. And you chose Fiji to be the setting of your book. What motivated you? What inspired you to, you have other places to choose from, but then you had Fiji there?
Yeah, and it was very much about exploring my heritage, exploring what it was like for the Indians who came over on those boats. I became extremely grateful when I went on that trip to India to these ancestors who I didn't know anything about, that we had escaped that cycle of poverty. So yeah, that was the reason. It was very much about, and I feel like growing up, I had this sense of foot in both worlds, Australia, Fiji, India, mixed up as to where I belonged, and didn't really feel a sense of belonging. And I feel like through this process, I went from not feeling like I belonged anywhere to feeling like I belong in both places. Like it's been a really great journey for me in terms of my own identity.
Wow, that is amazing. And coming back to your family, how did your mom, dad, and your siblings feel on the day of your book launch?
Yeah, it was amazing. There were lots of tears. My father, again, he stood up and gave a speech. My mum cooked, because that's mums. So yeah, it was a really beautiful. My sister flew over to Melbourne for it. Yeah, it was great. It was a
Wow.
real family moment.
And I know, with writing, it can be a lonely journey. When everybody else is doing other things, you're sitting there in front of your computer, typing away. You're inside these dark, gloomy archival rooms. You're going to these libraries that nobody's ever walked in for years, opening boxes that no one has ever opened for over a century. And the list goes on. Wow. What would be your, I know you want to acknowledge those who have helped you along the way. You mentioned about your family, and I'm sure you have other friends and other researchers and other institutions that helped you. I'll give you this time if you want to say thank you or acknowledge them this afternoon?
There were archivists at the National Archives who, gave me so much help, and also the librarians at USP have been. I was just there. I spent about a week at, every day at the USP, at the Pacific Collection at the USP Library, and they just went out of their way to help, and were very obliging and so efficient. Like, everything just ran really smoothly there. So yes, the librarians at USP as well. And some of the professors there, I met up with a few of the professors there, and they were incredibly helpful. And then finally, a huge thank you to Joanne, who is the manager of New Mavida Lodge in Levuka, and she's the lady who took me to stay in the village in Livoni. So she just so took care of me, and I had such a wonderful experience there.
Yay, Vinaka. And we say bula to everybody from Levuka. Everybody
Yes.
that is listening, bula Levuka.
Yes.
And to the Mavida Lodge staff, and also to the villagers of Lovoni.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Wow, that is wonderful. Vinaka Vakalevu. And Nilima, since we are celebrating the Fiji Language Week, and it's connected to our history and to our heritage, what would be a word of encouragement to those who are listening in for our people to start writing our stories, writing our stories, whether in Hindustani, in Rotuman, and Fijian. What would you like to say to that?
Yeah, I think it's such a powerful thing to, academic texts, they can teach you, but you don't feel it here. Like, I feel like creative writing is where you feel it in your heart, and it becomes more than facts and figures that you're learning. It becomes a story that resonates. So I think telling those stories is so valuable as a method of keeping our history, and keeping our culture.
Wow, yes, Vinaka Vakalevu, Nilima, for joining us today. We're so thrilled, and we just want to congratulate you for your first book. And we're looking forward to your second book, book number 2, that is due in December, not very long. And then you have your plans for book 3. So from all of us, your fans of Talanoa with Dr. T, we have some folks who are already Googling your name now, and looking at buying your book on Amazon. Vinaka Vakalevu Nilima, and we just want to say Vinaka to you and your beautiful family for their support to enable you to write. Any other last comments you want to say before we finish?
No, just thank you, Vinaka Vakalevu, for having me on here, and for having this is such a great initiative. So congratulations to you as well.
So Vinaka Vakalevu Nilima, you enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and we'll be in touch after you submit book number 2.
Fantastic. Thanks. Sounds good.
Vinaka, Mother Nilima, Mother. Bye. Yes, wow, what a wonderful Talanoa session we've just had with Nilima Rao. She's one of our writers and author of Fiji descent. So she was born and raised in Fiji for the first 3 years of her life, and then her family moved over to Australia. So she's currently connecting in from the beautiful city of Melbourne. So we are here to celebrate our writers and our authors. So we have a number of authors that are lined up to connect with us this week. So at the moment, we have Mary Rokonandravu, Dr. Perry Ryan, Darren Kamali, Kelera Nganivatu, who have agreed to come on my program. And then I'm waiting for the others as well that I've invited. So there will be one author per day. So look forward to tomorrow, where we will be listening to one of our authors. So again, we're celebrating the Fijian Language Week, but we're taking it to another level of appreciating language to be written in written form. So we've been celebrating the use of the language in speaking, the use of the language in singing, and now we're using language into writing. na nonda i Talanoa. O ni takani o nina maro takana ave Talanoa ni kua, watake Nilima Rao, aveke menina varong tiko mai, o vavini vinaka veke menina no mnisema mai ni kua, Timothy na unre, Monica Siliwale, Catherine Wangawonawon, do bula vinaka, Melaya Kadi, Eunice Wong, vinaka vale vike mdana do vamore tiko na no programo, vavini vinaka vakalevu na no munindo vito koni tiko mai, en non da volatiko rongo tiko no non ritala no irando bola. Kosarngai andona kadona viva kongeti kina au suratal chinga na dorobonita o aisia bola volatal chinga ko sona i bola ni vika pakabanua na kani sebu na kani tumbe na vika vaya do bunga na ngona o ira na no dorobo ira do tar chinga tok tati takabata na sebu takabata na tumbe sa vivo kasarnga mikin na dorobo ni korongo dorobo ni silubada mai koro aisia bola ke warang cuma aisia sa bambul cukani vikem ni sangol telangani vikem ni poli visureti muni ngol telangame muni me Talanoa viva kongeti na lomo ni madongo na viva kongeti member letter na nonda pola na nonda ipola. So let's write our own stories, let's write our own history and celebrate our language at the same time. Sa vamos a vikem ni todo ksara poli vinaka koni rovono koni vasedake na kvalevu teringo na siamo tumeni kua va vini vinaka ni vale vikem ni todoko na nom ni vito koni mana sini vinaka ni kua ni matakatale na sota na ndo tal chuna nonda bulangi member letter na kena bulai na nonda tuku makawa keina nonda i Talanoa. Sa vamos a vikem ni todo ksara vinaka valevu na siamo mai ni matemata.